Okie dokie. So we're just gonna kind of get the class started on the half hour, which will be in about 3 minutes, but just to make sure everybody can get in and get settled, we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we'll see if everybody's joining us and whatever. And there's Krampus scratching at the door like the evil little Krampus he is. Terrible little boy. So who is in here? Just out of curiosity, because it'll always tell me there's X amount of people, and then it doesn't appear that there are, just based on the interactions. So I'm always curious who's actually in here. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this blue butterfly pea flower tea. It's supposed to be making everything blue, and I don't know. I decided to try it, and yeah, it's blue. So I'm having some strawberry tea, but it's blue, and that's fun. Hello, Menno. I'm glad you were able to make it. We will be doing a Patreon call tomorrow, or chat tomorrow, in the morning. So I would say maybe 2 hours before this, and then we'll do, if we have the energy, we'll do a Book of Enoch live stream after that. That's the plan, anyway. And as I was getting ready, I felt, okay, feeling good. Maybe we can do 2 videos, 3 videos. And then now I'm just sitting here thinking, can I even get through this video? It sucks. I'm just like, just imagine what it's like to have, to live with like chronic pain or chronic fatigue or something like that. Imagine you have a character that's pretty high level and you're able to use your mana reserves to cast all kinds of spells, big spells, a bunch of little spells, low level spells, not a big deal. But then imagine that your character is still that level, you still have all these things to try to accomplish in the game, you have all these quests to try to do, you have all these monsters to try to fight, but your mana well is now half of what it was. Like, you just sign into the game and it's just your mana well is half, and all of the cooldown time between casting spells has now doubled. But you still have all the same stuff to do, you still have all the same quests to accomplish, and you would just be so frustrated trying to finish this game, because there's still so much to do and now you don't have enough mana to do it with. So that is kind of what it's like. Yeah. So just being awake and moving around. You start off like, yeah, I think today is going to be a normal day, and then an hour later you're just like, how am I like already out of mana? how was putting a wig on, now I'm out of mana. So it's very, very annoying. Yeah, I'm glad you're able to join us too, Norsvast. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is it like northwest? Is that what your thing means? I don't know what language that is, but that's what it sounds like. Alright. So it is 8:30 a.m. for me. For you, it should also be the half hour, unless you're living in one of those countries where you're like ahead half an hour. That's a different thing. And today we're going to talk about geography, because we have not talked about geography in a while. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I hope you guys want to interact, because this is a class, and so the interaction is very helpful. So geography is not just maps. How many of you had geography in school and all you did was like color maps and memorize names of nations, names of their capitals, and what their flags look like? How many for you that was your geography class experience? It's 2:30 a.m. I'm guessing then, just based on your, I don't remember exactly, but I'm assuming based on your name and the time, you must be in like a northern European country. That's my guess. I would guess Norway. If not, Sweden, if not Iceland. But I don't think Iceland because of the time. Yeah. Yes, so Menno is listing a bunch of places. Right. So that's. Did anybody have like a song or a rhyme or anything to go with it? We didn't. I didn't. But yeah, it was always like, oh, it's a map. Color this map. Map. And maps, they're great. Oh, you're from the Middle East. Oh, okay. Yeah, was very off there. So we have this idea that it's all maps. But part of geography is actually physical systems. So what's going on in the earth and why this happens. As well as human systems, like why humans interact with stuff and how humans interact with stuff, and where we choose to live, and all of that good stuff. Okay, so we'll talk about the physical systems, we'll talk about the human systems, and then we'll talk about mixed systems and why we should care. So the physical system, just the definition of it, it's just basically the changes and balances that the earth makes with itself. And we're talking about air temperature, we're talking about wind, we're talking about different kinds of climates, and as you probably know, we've had ice ages and everything in the past. Climate change is something that happens without human interaction. We can't affect it, but of course the climate still changes. And I think that's one of the things that's been a little bit frustrating, trying to explain to people that don't really understand climate change, because they'll say, well, climate change happens anyway. It's true, but that doesn't mean that humans don't affect it. It's sort of like rocks roll down the hill anyway, or avalanches happen anyway. Yeah, that's true, but we can also push rocks, throw rocks, or cause avalanches as well. So just because something happens normally doesn't mean that that's the only cause, and we can also affect it. In geography, we studied plant coverage, weather, and stuff. Cool, you probably talked about albedo and all of that cool stuff. So I'm glad to hear it. So the stuff that we talk about in terms of physical systems is basically processes of the earth that we didn't create. The earth just kind of does this stuff. So, just to really drive the point home, if everything, humans that had died, if all the humans died on the planet, we would still have these changes going on. So one of the systems to remember is the water system. You guys may have learned this as the water cycle. Who learned it as the water cycle? I learned this water cycle, and then now I have to teach it as the water system. It's interesting to see like the updates to stuff since I've been a student. I think I would have taken a class like this over 20, 25 years ago. Probably would have taken a class like this 25 years ago, yeah. So it's different, like what we figured out. We found out a lot of cool stuff about Neanderthal and things in that time period. So what did you learn? Oh yes, the Waterkringloop. Okay, that's good. That would be the cycle, right? Not necessarily the system, because it's the loop. So we also call it the hydrologic cycle, if you guys care about that. And this is with water and temperature and how it interacts and what it does. So those are the two big things here. Step one, you guys probably know, is evaporation. So this is our, memorize the vocabulary section of the book here for sure. So we're just talking about any type of liquid being heated up, and then it goes into a gas or into a vapor. In this case, of course, we're talking about water, but yeah, anything can evaporate. I guess if you apply enough heat to people, though, we tend to cook more than we evaporate, so, but we're a solid, not a liquid. Our blood would evaporate, so that would be something else. And I know it's gross, but people tend to remember these gross ideas. So sublimation happens as well. This is when a solid straight up becomes a gas. Okay. Does anybody know when this would happen? I like this image, by the way. I think this image works really well for sublimation. When would we take this solid, so in this case ice, water ice, and then it becomes a gas. When would that happen? And I know there's a lag, so I'll just check my blue tea. Every time I drink this tea, I really hope I don't spill it on myself. I don't know if it'll stain, so that's the fear. I think this is one of the things that it sucks about. This is, I would say, the one downside of the live streams, and also online teaching, I think, too, is you're just kind of sitting in front of a camera and then just waiting. Extremely high temperatures, that can cause it, absolutely. We can think about, like, we can think about maybe the planet Mercury, and if there's any type of ice on there, that could be sublimated off, right? It wouldn't just evaporate or liquefy and then evaporate. So that would be sublimated for sure. On Earth, this is where it happens. So we're going to be in these areas that are very, very, very high altitude. And a lot of times on a hot day, the ice will just turn into a gas. So that's one of the things that would happen here. Condensation, or to condense, it's when that gas comes together, becomes a liquid. In this case, it's coming together to make a cloud, and eventually that cloud gets too heavy and starts to drop and rain. And I'm sure you guys have been aware of this and you know this. Remember, these are not only for younger high school students, so about ages 14, 15, but also students that are learning English as another language, as a foreign language. So we do want to make sure that we understand these, but this is actually still all in the textbook, so I guess it assumes that you never learned this. When did you guys first learn about the water cycle? I feel like I learned about it like I think in elementary school. We talked a little bit about it, maybe made a poster or diagram or something. Of course, we didn't learn about sublimation. That's why I wanted to add it. It's actually not even in the book, so I wanted to make sure that students knew this does happen. Yeah, the low air pressure, absolutely. That is another thing to affect it as well. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Because of course you're not going to get like boiling water temperatures here. But for some of you, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but when we had these boxes of like cake mix, for example, there would be the baking instructions, and then it would say like high altitude baking instructions. So there's different baking instructions based on the relative pressure that you're at. So this is kind of cool. Let's see here. That is how soju is made. Okay, very cool. I did go to the soju museum in Andong. So that was very fun. I was very, very interested in this, but I love museums, so what a surprise. A big nerd became a teacher, right? I know that didn't shock you at all. So of course, enough water gets together, becomes a cloud, and of course we have precipitation. I had to look for a lot of different pictures of these of happy clouds dropping happy rain. Okay, so thank you to all the people on the Google search that helped me out with that. So usually when we think about precipitation, we're thinking about rain. But actually it's just pretty much anything that falls out of a cloud that's related to water. I guess if I'm looking up through the clouds and then an airplane falls through it, that is a tragic accident, not precipitation. Okay. Hello, Hiram. Yes, these are the cumulus clouds. We don't get too much into the clouds, but if you want some extra credit, you can. Okay, so that'll be fun. So snow counts as precipitation. Hail counts as precipitation. Just out of curiosity, how many of you live in a place or have lived in a place where it does snow? Or I guess the opposite question is, who's living in a place where it does not snow throughout the year? I think I first saw snow going to a mountain to see the snow. So I was, in my childhood, we lived in an area that was very hot. So there was no snow unless you went to the mountains. And again, you'd go there specifically to let your kids play in the snow or, to ski or something like that. Gosh, I think I have one memory of that. And then in my teenage years, we had moved. And so it would snow every year-ish. But usually it would snow and then rain. So it wasn't great. The worst year we had was when it snowed about... Oh, it's about this much. It snowed this much. I was thinking like, oh, I know the inches, but what's the centimeters? Should I just show it with my hand? Actually, I don't know how many that is. And then, oh, okay, it's about that much. And then we had about this thick of a layer of ice that got put on there. So it was nuts. We couldn't leave the house for a week because we weren't in an area that got enough snow to justify snow plows. And so school was out for a week. A lot of people didn't go to work. And if you think about that now, we don't really get... Are we going to get snow days ever again? Because now we got all these Zoom classes and online classes. This whole setup is here. Are we ever going to get a snow day ever again? I'm not sure. Okay, you have snow on the ground right now. Yeah, we got snow yesterday, the day before. I don't know if there's still snow out. It's not an area that gets a lot of snow. We have it's a dry winter. So that's why if you ever wondered why Korean skincare products are really good and really moisturizing, they have to withstand this like super dry winter. Mind you, when it does snow here, it turns to sludge most of the time. Not good for snowballs. No, I guess it's good for tricking people with like a slushie. You can blend it with ketchup or something to make it look red and say, hey, I bought these slushies. Do you want one? It's just like nasty dirt snow. Don't do that. I guess you could, but don't do it. Some people put a glass of water every time the temperature is below 32 just to show their kids ice. If you are a kid watching this, plastic cup. Okay, plastic cup. Do not put glass. I tried to make... I remember being a kid trying to do some experiment in the freezer, and this glass had just shattered. And I got in trouble. So, used to snow a lot when I was a kid. Now every 5 years or snow. So, gotcha. Yeah, the climate, of course, as we mentioned, is definitely changing. What about hail? Have you lived in an area where you've had hail? Was it big hail? Was it scary? Some of the hail can get the size of a baseball. I mean, that'll just end your day. You know what I mean? That's it. It's over. Knock you right out. And if you're not dead, you are in the hospital. Probably waking up in the hospital. Snow slushies, that would be cruel and evil. Takes notes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. You gotta be careful. If somebody's gonna believe it and then they're about to drink it, just stop them. At least. Be nice. Be nice. We don't want somebody drinking that, because it's not just dirt. I mean, it's dirt and whatever was in there. There could have been dog poo in there, and now they're gonna get sick, and it's your fault. That sucks. Hail, yes. Gotcha. I think hail is fun. Occasionally we got hail, and I don't know, I just liked it. I like the sound it makes on the roof. Is it snowing? I don't know. I don't know which region it would... Oh, I don't have my phone with me. Yeah, if it snows, like in Seoul, of course that doesn't necessarily mean it's snowing everywhere else. Just because, it's a small country, but there is enough of a difference. Let's see. It says it's possibly going to snow a little bit later, but not right now. Oh well, we'll see. It's going to snow in New Jersey. I get to wear my stupid purple clown costume and then the Star of David. Is there a special Jewish snow outfit? I'm very confused. Floods are becoming more frequent in my city. That's unfortunate. And what's difficult is that as the climate changes, we have to change not only infrastructure but our like the vehicles that we employ. So, like I had mentioned, we were stuck in our house for a week because we just never got enough snow to justify, for the city to justify purchasing a bunch of snowmobiles and hiring people to drive them around. So if the climate changes again to encourage more of that, that's a new thing that we're going to have to pay for. So it's just something to consider. Sleet, this like nasty wet rain snow. I'm just gonna skip this slide. I hate sleet. Every time I look at sleet, it just makes me cold looking at it. Sleet is nasty. This is like, oh, it's cold. This is like your bones are cold because you're cold and you're soaking wet. That's awful. I will say in Korea, a very smart idea is that when it's snowing outside, people use umbrellas. I don't know why that never occurred to me. I've never seen people use umbrellas in the snow until I came to Korea. And I thought, why? That doesn't really, like, who cares? But of course, once you're inside, that snow will quickly start melting, right? So you had a dusting of snow on your jacket, now your jacket's just wet. And then you gotta go back outside, and now you're colder than you normally would be. So, umbrella, it's a good time. Then one of the last stages here is you collect the water. So the water collects back up, and then it evaporates again. It's a good time. Okay. When the water collects together, we call that a body of water. So these are just some examples of bodies of water. And of course, does the thing again. We have our second system, which is the climate system. And I'm going to go ahead and check out frogs and fish. Frogs and fish, what? Floods related to frogs and fish? What did I say related to frog and fish? I'm having my brain is like doing the blue screen. I saw a blue screen like last week. That was I was like, what is this blue screen? Why? I thought we got rid of that. Yeah, so I'm not sure what the frogs and fish references to, so please help remind me. So the climate system is going to be our, as in rains of, no, not rains of frog and fish. I mean, though that is more of a, not a rain so much as it is usually related to tornadoes. So tornadoes and hurricanes can pick up certain animals and then drop them off in other places. So that is where we get like frog rain from, like frogs will rain from the sky. And some spiders ride like gusts of wind, and so you can get spider rain. Which would you rather encounter, frog rain or fish rain? Which would you rather get hit in the head with, a frog or a fish? No, it's just you can see on the video I wear a snow shovel at the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva, the other houses. Oh, okay. Alright, so climate includes anything in the following region. It can talk about temperature. We can talk about the climate, and we're talking about the temperature. Okay. The humidity, the atmospheric pressure, okay, winds, precipitation. So the big difference is that weather is something that's happening right this second. I can look at whether it's happening tomorrow, whatever. Climate is going to be a 30-year average. And so I think this is a very helpful visual here. So climate's just a 30-year average. So that's why I think some people have a misunderstanding when they hear that the climate has increased by 1 degree, and they don't really understand what that means. That means that the extreme climate, the hot climate, or the hot temperatures, are becoming more and more frequent to the point that it actually changed the entire climate, which is that 30-year average. Okay, so that's why it's such a big deal. It's not that the climate, or that's not that the weather goes up 1 degree. It's that the weather has increased in temperature so much that it's affected this average. So that's the big deal about it. You'd rather get hit with fish. I feel like frogs. I would rather get hit with a frog. Because I would feel like maybe the frog could live. The fish would be just dead, unfortunately, just because it doesn't survive, right, outside of the water. But I feel like if the frog was living, I would keep it. It's like, or I could at least, save it and put it into, I don't know, a pond or something. But that fish, it's like, ouch, that sucks. Aw, and the fish is dead too. At least with the frog, there's hope. I also think they might be lighter, because we wouldn't be picking up these big old bullfrogs or something. We'd be picking up these like little froggies. It's a good time. Last October, we had a Category 4 hurricane in New Orleans. A mild tropical storm changed to a Cat 5 in less than 24 hours, getting more unpredictable. That's unfortunate. Norsvoss said that they can eat the fish. Well, you can eat frogs, too. Have you eaten a frog? I take it you haven't eaten frog. It tastes like sweet chicken. That's my... I guess that's the only way I can explain it. So some stuff in nature that affects the climate is the altitude. Okay. Latitude is another thing. There's latitude and there's longitude. And the way that it was described to me in school was that latitude looks like a ladder, so it's latitude. It sounds very dorky and stupid, but I've remembered that since school, so I guess it works. By the way, this area is called the tropics. Oh, I was gonna click on my annotation thing, but this isn't Zoom. So right around the equator, so at 0, and then we go up 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south. This region is the tropics. Okay, when we talk about tropical areas, that's the region we're talking about. Tropical doesn't mean that it's going to be hot. It doesn't mean that it's going to be humid. It's likely it will be that way at sea level, but if we're in the tropics and we're in a high mountain, it's still going to be snowy. So we have to remember that. Okay. So when we're talking about tropical, it's a region. Okay. That's what we're talking about. Hopefully that helps. Okay. And so the other thing with the latitude, it also depends, you can kind of see here the amount of sun that we get, right? The other issue too that this image is showing is the sun's tilt, and we are checking out the solstice. So I do have the makeup was intentional. It was kind of related to this. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, spring is going to begin. And so that's kind of why we have blue, like from winter going into green for spring. I don't know if anybody saw that. And then it's blue going into yellow, like sunshine. Okay. So we're actually hitting a special solar day on the 1st of February, and it ends on the 2nd of February for this year. It's the midpoint between the recent solstice and the upcoming equinox. So in the northern hemisphere, spring begins. In the southern hemisphere, autumn is beginning. So that is why we have that. I've also got like a moon and some stars, and it's just like a sun. So it's an actual outfit based on my geography lesson. So that's the idea behind it anyway. All right. Do you guys have any favorite seasons that you want to share? I personally like autumn, but coming out of winter, I have a hard time with the cold these days, so I do like the fact that spring is coming. Norsvoss can't even touch a frog. Gotcha. Just don't like the skin or something. Are you speciest? Frogist? So anyway, this is why also why we get these 24-hour periods of night or 24-hour periods of sun on the poles. So in the North Pole or South Pole. And again, you can see just the time period. So in June, in the north, we're getting a lot of sun, and we're not getting a lot of sun in the South Pole. Does that mean that the sun stays up? Yeah, it does. And I did get to see that a little bit when I was in Sweden during the summer. The sun I wouldn't say super north, I was in the capital, and so that's not drastically high. But even still, you wake up at 3 a.m. or something, and it looks about that sort of right before the sun goes down, kind of twilight sort of um, look. So, for example, I was staying in an Airbnb, so it was somebody's home. I had never been there, but waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, I didn't have to turn on any of the lights. I could just find where I was going. It was dark enough that it wasn't too annoying to sleep, but it was definitely light enough that you could just walk around and see exactly what you were doing. So it's pretty cool to see, I think. As for that darkness, I was in Finland for a December, like around New Year's time. The sun did come up, but jeez, it would come up maybe around 9 or 10 a.m. and start going down around 1 or 2 p.m. So it was weird. You didn't really want to do anything all day, so that was an interesting time period. Let's see. You love the summer and that's all you got. Okay. Autumn too. I can dress for cold. Heat is inescapable. That's true. Yeah. For me, I got the wig on because I feel pretty cold. I'm wearing a thermal right now. I've got my fuzzy pajama bottoms. Fall and autumn is good. Summer is nice too. Summer because living is easy. So, did I get to see the Aurora Borealis? I did not. I was really sad about that. Interestingly, because of the reason behind the Aurora Borealis, the flight attendants and pilots that have to fly a lot of these areas in the North Pole, or the polar region in the north, they have a higher incidence of cancer, which is interesting. I guess it's one of those things where you didn't think about it, but oh, okay, that makes sense when you hear about it. At least that's how it was for me. It's interesting. I don't see anybody putting spring here. Let's see. When they were kids, they scared us from touching frogs with a myth that says if you touch them, you will get warts. Yeah, that's what I was told too about toads. If you touch a toad, you'll get warts. But then one of my aunties had a pool, and there were these toads that got into the pool, and we were really scared because there's all this chlorine in the pool. And so as little kids, we're like, oh no, we have to save the toads. And we felt really scared to touch them because we got to get warts, but we felt more sorry for these toads. So we picked them up and put them out of the pool area, and then we never got warts. And that's when we realized they were lying to us. Why do parents say that? Probably to get their kids to stop touching the wildlife, which is great, especially if you live in an area where there are poisonous animals that the poison can be passed through the skin, just by that touching contact. But when a child finds out that it's not true, then they start wondering, well, what else do my parents tell me that is a lie? Are my parents just, do they just not know, or are they lying to me? And so you start to kind of doubt what your parents are saying. So I would recommend being honest with your kids, for sure. Wild should be a universal myth. Yeah, I think it's, again, just to get your kids to stop touching it. I don't know how old the myth is, but I think it's, part of it also was probably to get kids to not touch amphibians that could be secreting poison through their skin, and then the kids could get it by contacting it, or touching it and then moving this frog or something and then eating a piece of candy without washing their hands, and they would ingest that poison. So I can understand that, but why not just say that? You don't know which ones are poisonous, don't touch them. No warts because your motives were pure. I suppose, yeah. I now that I think about it, I guess that was a very pure-hearted, child thing to do. Oh no, what if but he's gonna burn in the chlorine. So we got this little guy out. And then he jumped back in again like an idiot, so we were like guarding this, you can't jump in there. So we were just very frustrated with this frog, or these toads. And this was an in-ground pool, so they got in very easily. But yeah. Do we mention licking toads? Yeah, you don't want to do that either. Again, that is, going to get that poison in there. Whether it kills you or transports you to another dimension, that is a different kind of thing. Have you ever kissed a frog just to see what happens? No, because we were told that the frogs could be dirty, and I was very worried about that. Um, I don't know. I was worried about germs a lot as a kid. Not, I wouldn't say germophobic. I wouldn't say anything like that, but just if something fell in the dirt, I didn't want to touch. Like some kids would clean it off and eat it. I just didn't want to do that. Um, and just this idea that stuff in the wild could have germs on it, that they were okay but I wasn't. So one of the examples my father had told us about was birds. Don't touch the birds because they, even if a bird looks like it needs help, they could have a disease that the bird looks okay but we would get sick from it. Or don't touch these dogs. If you see a dog, especially if it's being friendly and you don't know like who owns the dog, don't touch it. It could have rabies. So this idea of kissing a wild animal just never would have occurred to me. And I was a very literal kid. I had a hard time with fairy tales. Like the idea of the cow jumping over the moon and stuff, I just thought was very stupid. I had a really hard time, like, with the characters in the story, because the cow only looked like she was jumping over the moon, right? If you didn't understand the perspective. And then the cow thought she jumped over the moon. The other animals thought she jumped over the moon. I was like, this is dumb. Obviously she didn't jump over the moon. This is dumb. And how are they so dumb? Where's the rest of the book that should show them that to correct the cow? Yeah, I guess it's not a surprise that I became a teacher. But yeah, that's just kind of the situation for me. I didn't believe that there was any magical benefit to kissing a frog, and I was also very concerned of any kind of diseases from kissing the frog. Then how do you know it's a prince? I mean, I didn't believe in this like magic stuff. I had a really, really hard time with that. And yeah. Separate from religion, right? There was like religion that I was raised in, and then those types of magic were not magic, but other type of magic was fake. So that's how you kind of compartmentalize it. Don't pick things up off the street. Dogs might have peed on them. Yeah, that's another thing for sure. So the terrain, the terrain will affect the climate, and the climate affects the terrain. But one of the ways that terrain will affect the climate is the amount of heat that it holds, so that can cause the area to be hotter or cooler, or just more temperate and pleasant to live. And you guys have probably seen something like this if you've ever been to the beach at night and it's a little bit cold but the water's quite warm, or in the morning around, right after the sun comes up and it's still kind of cold in the morning, but that sun is starting to heat you up really nicely, and then you touch the water and it's freezing cold. So that just has to do with how long it takes water versus something like sand to absorb and release heat. And so that, of course, also affects the climate. Birds are the dirtiest, more unhygienic creatures on Earth. I thought that was pigs. So this climate system is how all of these interact. How the atmosphere interacts with the water, which is the hydrosphere, the biosphere is us and the other animals and plants, and so on, as you can see from here. So that system is just it interacting with itself. The land system, plate tectonics. Who has never heard of plate tectonics? Hopefully you've heard of plate tectonics. And I guess another question is anybody who's watching this, is that anybody here Muslim or raised Muslim? Because I've spoken with Muslims about a couple things in the Quran, and just as some creationist type people will say something like evolution is just a theory, I've heard people say plate tectonics is just a theory. So it's a good idea to maybe discuss what a scientific theory is. So a theory in everyday English is sort of a guess, your best guess, an educated guess. You might have seen it in crime shows where the detective has a theory on how the murder had happened. Of course, a scientific theory is different, and it's really frustrating that they have such a different meaning, but the word is the same. So a scientific theory means we started with a hypothesis, which was a testable idea. And then we tested it, we collected information, we observed stuff, we gathered data, we tested it, we retested it, and now we have to figure out like an explanation in words for why this thing happens. That's the theory. The theory is the explanation of why this thing happens. This is after we've gathered all this data. Okay, you were raised Muslim. Did you ever have any issue with plate tectonics because of that passage in the Quran where it says that the mountains are as pegs or as stakes, or that they have deep roots and that it holds the earth in place? And that's, of course, not true. And I was always wondering why that was said, because as you can see, in the Arabian Peninsula, there's actually quite a few earthquakes that happen here. One example is in Pakistan, for example. Up to 500 earthquakes might happen in a given year. So obviously the earth isn't being held stable. So I was just wondering why, if somebody would come up with that idea, you would think it would be in a place where there's not a lot of earthquakes, at least. So that's... Oh, okay, so you're talking about the birds and their cloaca? Gotcha. So that, yeah, so the thing with the mountains as pegs and stuff, I was very just surprised, because that's not how that works. A theory is supported by other theories. Yes. I mean, it doesn't... I wouldn't say that's required, but that's typically, yeah, the case. Like germ theory also is based on evolution theory, right? So that's kind of how they... I mean, they're not based on it, but they work together. Anyway, so I was just curious, Norsfast, about how you heard about that. Yeah, when I learned the mountains were a result of tectonic plate movement, that did bother me. Yeah, I've met some Muslim people online, and they'll ask, well, have you read the Quran? Yes. Okay. Well, what did you find unconvincing? And I said, well, there's some factual errors in there, and they'll talk about how there's deep roots, and I guess you can sort of think about it that way, but these don't hold the land in place any more than an iceberg has deep roots, but that doesn't hold the water in place. Do you know what I mean? It also doesn't hold the iceberg in place. So it doesn't really work, and I was very confused by that. And somebody had said, well, you should listen to some apologists like Zakir Naik, and so I did. And his idea was, and he said, if mountains were not here, then with every step, with every human's footstep, the earth would just do this, which I don't know how he came up with that. So not as much as when it says the sun sets in a pond. Norsvas, I don't remember if you were here for some of our Book of Enoch videos, but yeah, it also mentions that Enoch sees where the sun has set. But yeah, it's kind of a interesting thing. So plate tectonics, one way that it was described to me is that it's sort of like if you take a hard-boiled egg and then you crack the shell but you don't remove it. If you push some of the pieces together, it makes these peaks like mountains, and you can pull it apart to make these rifts, these cuts in the middle between the eggshell and the other eggshell. And I think that's a pretty good way to think about it. So the Earth, of course, has a lot of layers to it, and because of that, this kind of crust, this hard layer that we're on, floats on this liquidy other layer as well, which is here. We can kind of see. So because of that, the land that we're on is always moving. It sort of depends on where you are, but it's about, I think it's like the amount, the length that your fingernail grows in a year, that's about as much as that any of those plates will move. And so we are on these plates, right? That's what they're just called. We have these interactions that these plates have, and that's the plate tectonics. We'll talk about that more later. But basically, there's three basic types. We've got divergent, that go away from each other, convergent, that come together, and transform, that pass by each other. All of them will cause earthquakes. But each one also has its own things that it will make. Divergent will make rift valleys, so it just kind of cuts and it makes these valleys that can fill in with water or not. Convergent will make volcanoes, and then over time those become just mountains and mountain ranges. And transform depends on how they're slipping. They can make some types of mountains, they can make some types of volcanoes, and then the transform, it also just moves the land, which is interesting for us. So if there are some interesting images where if you have a transform fault, which is that line between them, so this transform fault, and then there's like a fence that goes across it to maybe fence in your land or fence in your animals. And if there's a sudden movement that causes a really big earthquake, that fence now is on two different levels. It's kind of interesting. So we'll check that out later. Let's see what you guys say. The earth has layers just like an ogre. Yes, that's true. The biosphere. So the biosphere is us and anything else that's alive. Okay. Again, when we talked about maps, we want to avoid blue unless we're talking about water. I guess I'll allow it for tundra, but no, I'm not a fan of that. So this includes, again, all of the plants and animals, all the different types of animals, and so on. So what about us? So we're just a type of animal, okay? We're pretty cool, right? So our systems include culture, arts, and customs, and all of that stuff. These are some examples of culture. You guys probably know what culture means. Is there anything that you particularly like or do not like about your culture that you can just think of? It could be any of these here. It could be a food. It could be a technique, a tradition, part of the language. What do you guys think? Then I will take my drink. It is theorized that India was not originally part of Asia and slowly went north and forced up the Himalayas. Yes, so it is on a different plate. So while you guys are answering that, I can show you. So we can actually see the Indian plate here. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse moving. So that plate had gone northward and just slammed into the Eurasian plate, basically. So not just Asia, but the Eurasian plate. And in doing so, it caused the Himalayas to be created, which is pretty cool. There we go. This image always makes me really hungry. Let's see. I just found your channel. If you'd ever like to discuss atheism versus theism and the paranormal with me in Discord or in your live stream, then just say so. That's fine. You can join our Discord. So while the rest of you are checking out or talking about some parts of your culture that you do not like, I can include the link to that if you want to discuss it. Anything in particular? Or any reason you're offering in particular? So one of the people so far wrote that, sorry, just getting this new link. I always forget to get it set up. Weddings are very expensive. Yeah, I never understood the concept of that. Electoral politics, okay. Asking about the last name in Korea, okay. Or your age. Let's see, the worst part is everything related to tribalism in the Middle East, okay. I think for my culture, the idea that just because somebody's older, it means they're right, and you can't really argue that. So it's this like borrowed Confucianism nonsense. And then I guess from the U.S., I would say the idea that that any opinion is okay, even when it goes against facts. I really don't like that about U.S. culture. Yeah. This idea that, well, it's just an opinion. Well, that's my opinion. Well, it's my right to have an opinion. Well, it's my right to say this. Well, sure, it's your right to have an opinion, but that doesn't mean your opinion is right. You know what I mean? So that's what was always so frustrating. Your opinion is not as good as an informed opinion. Do you know what I mean? And so this idea that everybody has opinions or everyone's entitled to their opinion. I mean, is that true? Sure, but people kind of take that to mean it's okay to just think whatever, and that's as good as being, informed, factually informed. So I really don't care for that. All right. Political systems, I know, those are always exciting. And society itself, that is its own system. Okay. The economy is also a system, and this probably has changed since this has been made. I wonder how many super rich we have, and by which definition, Let's see. So the mixed systems, right? Humans working with this system. Let me see what somebody had posted. I think it is a very black and white culture. The U.S. is a very black and white culture. In what way? I think some of it is, but I don't know which ways you're talking about it. Well, I mean, yes, I know what you mean by no gray area, but I'm saying, can you give an example? Because I've seen, I can think of some examples of where it is a gray area, where everybody's opinion is okay. In a case where it should be black and white, But I also know some people, like with politics, it's very black and white. And that's unfortunate. I really think there should be no political parties. I think we should just judge each candidate based on, their education history and their work experience and all of that, their policy ideas. So the mixed systems are humans and how we interact with the planet, how the planet affects us, how we affect the planet. So stuff like, how do natural disasters affect the population? How does the climate limit or encourage population growth? How are humans harming the environment? So this has to do with CAFOs. So these are concentrated animal feeding operations, I think is the O. So it's the type of animal farming, not the George Orwell type, that we do for meat production. So it's not like you as a farmer with a couple cows and then occasionally you slaughter one and sell that at the market. This is like a type of big section of land that now you can't really use for farming or any type of forestry. It's covered in manure. The cattle are not very healthy, but just the amount of farmland that has to sustain this level of cows or pigs or chickens in terms of food, it is pretty damaging to the environment. And I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable hearing that. Let's see. Changing, but in the 90s, over 90% of the U.S. believed in God. They tend to be very judgmental. It is changing for sure in that case. And I think when you said that, it's very black and white, the thing that I was thinking of was the belief that comes from like evangelical Christianity. It's a phrase that kind of comes from the Bible, but it says that you're either with us or against us. You're either with God or with Satan. So that's this idea. Very judgmental. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. So why should we study any of this? You are late. That's okay. I will still accept your homework, but I have to mark you absent because you're so late and the class is almost over. So you're going to have to explain to your parents why you're absent, Ratza. They can call the school if they need to. So studying these things, of course, helps us plan our future, not just as individuals, but of course as a society. And we have to think about why we live in a society, right? I was just talking with my friend about this concept the other day, and just this idea that a lot of people are quite selfish in a society. Okay, go live by yourself. You know what I mean? The whole purpose of humans living in a society is that we can kind of support each other where the other person is not so good, and they can support us in areas where we're not so good. And as a group, we can take a large step forward and another step forward. But the way that we're kind of doing it now, where we're doing very selfish things, it's like we're all just running around in a circle and not actually going anywhere. We're not making any progress. So we do want to understand why we live in a society first, and then understand, okay, so it is important how we plan our future, even if it's a little inconvenient to me now. That doesn't mean it's something that is going against your rights or anything like that, not to dehumanize you, but for something where, okay, maybe I can afford to buy enough of a product instead of over purchasing it to hoard it. A good example would be the US starting the pandemic, and the mask hoarding or the toilet paper hoarding. A lot of people, or some people unfortunately, bought this stuff to drive up the price and sell it to people online, and that was just disgusting. That's so selfish. And other people who didn't have that supported it. Well, that's their right. I mean, if that's what you want to do, why are you in a society? You know, if you don't want your fellow people to also be healthy and have adequate basic necessities, why are you part of a society? Go live in the forest. You want to be by yourself, just go do that. You know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Can we just extend class by like an extra hour? I was thinking to start the other lesson, but I'm not sure exactly. We'll see. I think I have to take off this wig. So what are some environmental problems that are caused by humans, and how can we fix them? So let's think of one environmental problem that is caused by humans. So whoever writes it first. And then we'll all think about ways to fix it. That's why I'm such a supporter of helping refugees. They are humans too. Right. And as a global society, their contributions can also help us. So I don't know why it's such a difficult thing, you know. So what is one environmental problem caused by humans? Light pollution. Cool. So how are we going to fix that? What is the problem with light pollution? Why is that a type of pollution? How is the environment harmed by light pollution? This is the hard part. I knew this would be the hard part. The last three slides are questions. New street lamp designs that supposedly help a little. Help a little with what? What is the problem with light pollution? I mean, yeah, I would prefer not to have it so bright. I would prefer if I look up at the sky, I get to see the stars. Cool. What's the environmental problem with that, though? Is this light pollution about astronomy or about directly harming nature? So again, we're talking about an environmental problem. Again, I would love to reduce light pollution because I would prefer to see the night sky. You know what I mean? I don't want to look outside and see just a bunch of lights, especially when I'm having a migraine, for sure. But we're talking about specifically an environmental problem. So an environmental problem. Like, why is it a problem? Plants and animals think it's dayish. It depends. It depends, especially I think the plants, a lot of plants are reactive to UV radiation, and that's not what our lights put out. It could harm nocturnal species, right? For species that sneak up on animals in the dark, and that's how they eat, it could definitely make it more difficult for them to eat, for sure. Okay, so how could we fix this then? So if the problem is that we want to make sure that night predators are able to maintain that level of predation to sustain their colony or whatever you want to call it, how can we assist that, but also still get our desire to have light at night because it's safe, right? So how can we be safe? Okay, fewer street lamps. We could all wear night vision goggles, okay? And any of these ideas are totally fine. We're just kind of brainstorming here, okay? I think one option could be something like at a certain time, like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, half of the lights have to be turned off or something like that. That way we sort of get the best of both worlds, maybe. Some type of compromise for human safety and the animal safety. Environmental problems caused by humans, nuclear waste. That's true, but we already chose one. So we're talking about the light pollution. Light pollution. Reduce the need to be out and about at night. Right, that's another option. You know, why are people out and about at night? What is that for? For some people, yes, they do work night jobs, but that's not the majority of the population. Why do people go out at night so much? Is there a way to reduce that so we don't need as many lights? Another pandemic, in what way? Cover street lights so the light doesn't leak out. Okay. Maybe put a partial cover. So if there's a park, for example, and there's a light here and there's a park behind it, maybe extend the cover so it doesn't shine back as much. That's fine. Partying, socializing. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people do go out for partying and socializing, and I'm not one of those people, and I would wager perhaps most of us in the chat are not those people either. So we would need a person who does like to go partying and socializing to be part of this planning committee, right? This urban planning kind of committee, because it wouldn't be right for us to just delete that nightlife just because we don't personally participate in it, right? Yeah, it's going to be hard to prevent. Exactly. You know, what is the function of nightlife? How can we cater to it? Should there be like a district for nightlife and then the rest of the sections of the city are relatively darker? That might be a solution. The pandemic forces businesses to close early. That's true. Yeah. So I think we've been having some weird environmental benefits from this pandemic. It has been weird. Maybe underground tunnels that don't light up above ground world. Okay. That's an interesting idea. That could, that brings its own issues with it, but if you're in an area that you can build something like that, you're not at risk for sinkholes, for example. Yeah, something like that might be, evolve echolocation like bats. How do we speed up our evolution there? Underground tunnels as opposed to above ground tunnels. No, I understand what you mean. That's okay. Because there's tunnels that go through a like a mountain. You know, I wouldn't call those underground tunnels necessarily. And then you have 24-hour stores and hospitals for when people are sick and need medicine. Right, exactly. You still want those open, for sure. And that's one thing that I found frustrating when I lived in a smaller town and I first had come to Korea. If I was sick in the middle of the night, there wasn't any place to buy any medicine. You know, I couldn't go buy cough medicine. I just had to cough all night. And then finally, after not getting any sleep, it's around 9 a.m. Maybe I can find a pharmacy that might be open and then hope I can find the cough syrup. Do you know what I mean? So that was very frustrating. We like to have that convenience and sometimes we need it, And then if the hospital people are... the hospital workers are awake, then we should have some stuff to support that, right? We need restaurants to support that, such as even just fast food. We would need like coffee shops open 24 hours. That's going to help people that are out at night, like firefighters, police officers, and medics. Those people should have access to caffeine if they need it. Gonna play the devil's advocate a bit. Do we need to solve the light pollution? Why not just let nature adapt to us, so we can evolve and develop as we want? So I think the answer there is that a lot of these systems that we have kind of interrupted has resulted in some problems for humans. So even if we look at it from a purely human centric point of view, I've lived in areas where there were like mountain lions that were nearby because we had just kind of gotten into their system. When we started killing off their food sources, they didn't just go away. They started coming into the cities. And it's the same thing with raccoons, for example. If they're not able to get food from their normal sources, they come into the cities, they come into the suburbs, and they pose a health risk for us, for sure. I know you don't think that way. And I think it's good to have these discussions. You know, it's good to think about it from all different types of angles. So that would be my answer to anyone who does who does actually think that. Even if it's just from a human-centric point of view, those animals pose a threat to us when we don't let them get the food and sleep that they need. Yeah, trash pandas, yes. Introduce the Second Amendment everywhere so nobody feels comfortable after sunset. Yeah, exactly. Urban foxes. Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, we had coyotes. Those were an issue. Mountain lions. Yeah, not a great time. So what are some of the natural environmental issues that hurt us? Can we predict them or plan around them? Okay. So what is one natural environmental thing that just happens without humans or with humans, but now because humans live in this area, we are negatively affected by these environmental situations that we might refer to as natural disasters? So how close are we to an extinction, even based on anthropogenic changes we have brought about, like light pollution and contamination? I don't think that we are like an extinction event, like a big extinction event, a human extinction event. What do you mean by that? Volcanoes, erosion. Let's see, Science Magazine, literally, it was an article about how we probably go extinct if insects disappeared, and they are disappearing. That's true. Volcanoes, that was first. So yes, volcanoes, erosion, and droughts, all of those are totally natural things. Volcanoes. Have you guys ever heard, like, in the news? Yeah, there it is. Don't build houses near volcanoes, right? That's the easy solution. But why? Why do humans build right next to volcanoes? Why do they do that? Aliens? I don't know if that's an environmental thing. If it's an issue, or if it's a nature thing, then that would not be part of our environment. It would be a natural extraterrestrial issue. A human extinction event, I don't think from light pollution. I don't know. I think we're so split up that it would be pretty hard to make us go extinct outside of us, like a super volcano going off. So when we've had issues where a really large volcanic eruption has gone up in the past and it's blocked out the sun because the ash and stuff stays in the atmosphere, so it can kind of block out the sun. So a lot of the plants will die, of course, and then the animals that eat the plants that die, and the animals that eat those animals die. And we are part of that consumption chain. So we would also start to die off. And I guess if you got lucky and you were like the last handful of people alive, you could just maybe survive off of all the canned food that you could find, all the dry food you could find. Maybe you could survive until the sun started, being more visible. But yeah, I would say most of the people on the planet would die from that, for sure. Let's see. At the time the volcanoes are not active, that's true. Of course, we don't want to build near an active volcano. But yes, Rat, so the soil near the volcanoes is really, really, really rich in nutrition. So if I'm a person that doesn't have a lot of money, or this is just where I was from, and my family is farmers, and, that's just how I was raised, and now I'm going to inherit the farm, and I'm going to give the farm to my kids, this is where we're farming, right? And we need these farms as well to provide food for these, larger communities. That's why people live near volcanoes. It's not because, I just thought it was a mountain. It's not because they're stupid or too lazy to move. They're there because this is a great area for farming. So that's why they are there. So can we predict volcanic eruptions? Can we plan around volcanic eruptions? Sometimes the caldera is water filled, providing drinking water. Yes, if there is a caldera, it is. And so for those that don't know about the caldera, let's say we have just like a normal triangular kind of shaped, stereotypical volcano, which is like a cinder cone or something like that. We have the magma chamber, let's say it's here, and it might empty throughout or from like the latest super explosion or something, super eruption. Because it's a hollow area, the top part will fall in and it can fill with water. So I think Mount Shasta in California, that's there's even, it says Crater Lake, like that's the name of it, is Crater Lake. I think that's a caldera. Mount Baekdu, which is on the border of China and North Korea, that is a caldera volcano. It's got Heaven Lake that's filled in there. So let's see. Yeah, Krakatoa would be an example. Klung Klung, yeah, those are some examples. And they come out of Indonesia. We had a recent eruption out of Indonesia. I think it was this month or in December. But we had, we get a lot of these out of Indonesia just because it's on the Ring of Fire. So it's a very active region. But when we're talking about some of these other places that there's still a lot of farming, we're thinking places in like Central America or South America, and those are also on the Ring of Fire as well. So we can't really predict eruptions exactly. We can say whether it's overdue or more likely to erupt. That's true. But that's the problem, right? We don't know. And so am I going to uproot my entire family and just give up this farm that's very fertile? It's producing all the stuff that we need. I'm making a good living selling this. My family has enough food, and just take a chance to move into some slum portion of the suburb or some portion of the city and try to figure out how to make a living from there. No, I'm going to live near the volcano. So if people are going to live near the volcano and they're providing a service to the greater community by providing this food as a produce item, right? And we have a hard time predicting these volcanoes, what do? So what is the solution? Solar flares were mentioned, but remember we're just talking about one, so that way we can just focus on one, so the teacher doesn't get a migraine. Mount St. Helens, yes. The ash. So even though Mount St. Helens was in Oregon, it did go into Washington State, and the ash was spread out pretty far, just carried on the winds, right? Let's see, we have controlled burns to prevent wildfires. Maybe we could have controlled eruptions or earthquakes, okay? We are accidentally setting off earthquakes with fracking, so we know that we can do that if we frack close to a fault line, so that line there. That's why in Korea our earthquake intensity has been increasing recently. I will say the controlled burns for wildfires tends to, I don't know about the controlled burns necessarily. I know that putting out a wildfire is part of why we're having these blazes now, because all of that stuff that would have, like, wildfires are just a natural event. They just are. When a wildfire goes through an area, it should burn up this dead stuff, and now the new stuff can grow. But if we stop that dead stuff from being burned by putting the fire out, more dead stuff collects, and so it tries to catch on fire again, but we put it out, so more dead stuff collects. And eventually we get to a point where there's so much of this dead stuff just ready to be burned that if we get a fire that we don't catch immediately, it turns into this like inferno. And that's one of the reasons, is because we keep putting them out. So how do we protect people against wildfires? Move away from from that area, but then what do? Because people want to live there. So that's, one of those issues again. Don't want to know if we can voluntarily switch on a composite cone, right? Mount St. Helens was poorly handled by those in charge, but it also exploded horizontally. Yeah, it just blew out the side there. Prairie fire in Kansas is beautiful, probably not for some of the animals that live there, right? So why can't we just dump lots of water into the volcano? The amount of magma is just so, it's so vast that if we just dumped, it really wouldn't make a difference. The heat from the rest of the magma that's not directly coming into contact with the water is just, it's not going to make a difference. I mean, think about there's a volcano that's currently erupting. That's been erupting since 1980, and it's still erupting today. So it's one of the volcanoes in Hawaii, and it's just been erupting. I mean, think about the amount of magma. Like, this is not. It's one of those scale things. Like, to us, maybe we would think about, oh yeah, the mountain doesn't look so high, like the peak doesn't look so high. Maybe we could fill it with enough water, but remember, it's going down into the earth, right? It's a lot more than we would think. Yeah, a nice bucket chain. Yeah, I suppose so. 100 gallons of magma will not be put out with a fire hose, right? No matter how big that hose is. Exactly. I mean, after all, we have these hotspot volcano, like, archipelagos, right? So we have these hotspots under water, and even with an entire ocean sitting on this hotspot, it still bloop, just keeps going and builds like an island chain. So even with the entire ocean pressing down on this magma, it still does not put it out. Yeah. But one of my students actually did ask that question. Just wanted to know what would happen. The volcano always wins. The only thing that we can plan around it, as far as I know, is to put a really, really good infrastructure in place to make people evacuate as fast as possible. So do, monthly or semi-annual volcano drills or something like that. Make sure that this area is very set up with like seismic activity detecting equipment. So that way, if there is any increase in increase in earthquakes or something, the people can be alerted. Hey, by the way, get ready. You might need to evacuate soon. Have a go bag, so you can just grab this, put it in the car, or have it already in your trunk. So that way you have everything with you if it comes to that. I think that is probably the best way to deal with it, since they're so unpredictable, but people also still really want to live nearby. Let's see, if Yellowstone blows, we're completely stuffed. Yes, but are we worried about it? Right. Sinkholes caused by drought. They can be. A lot of sinkholes are caused by water eroding away stuff underground. So there's limestone's a big issue with this. Mexico City has a big problem with this because it was built on a swamp. But in the case of a drought causing us to overly rely on the aquifer and take out too much water before we can refill it, that can definitely create a sinkhole for sure. Let's see. All I know, if there's a volcano eruption, I'm going to go to Lee. By the time it's erupted, she would have figured out what to do. Yeah. Hopefully. That's the hope. Canned food. Thank you for the Discord invites. Cool. That's fine. Catholic traditionalists, just remember that it is a minor-friendly Discord, so no profanity and all of that stuff. And definitely don't yell at anybody. I don't know what your goal is or why you have decided to talk to me while we're talking about geography. About atheism and stuff, but you're welcome to be there, but it's about discussion, and if it seems like you're just arguing or talking at people or talking over people, of course you will be removed. I don't want any younger people to feel like some adult is badgering them and beating them over the head with this religious argumentation. So yeah. Can I say gosh darn? Yes, you can say golly gosh darn too. I also have just different words like fudge and fracking. What about diverting the lava by digging canals? There's two issues with that. So that's a good idea, right? But there's two issues with diverting the lava. One is we don't know how much is going to come out, so we might spend all this time and money trying to do that, and then end up they're not really helpful. The other issue is the lava is a problem, but the bigger issues are caused by stuff like the pyroclasts, which are these like it's debris that comes out. So it's like these big rocks and stuff that get sent out and can smash people's houses or cars or just flatten the person or, you know, give them a concussion or knock them dead. Also the gases, just poisonous gases that come out, and the ash. So I think the big cover over might work for ash, but it would have to be in a totally enclosed place. It couldn't just be like a large canopy or something. It would have to be very enclosed. And I think that type of thing where it's super enclosed, we don't know if lava is going to be coming, and we would need really heavy duty air filters. I think just the logistics of that would be very expensive. And also, I think putting a bunch of people in a panic situation into a single room would be very, would increase the amount of panic, right? Especially since we can't see now, is there any lava following this? Are we going to be buried in lava, stuck in this room, you know? So I think that it would be better to have gas masks that could be available at different stations. We could have that concept of a station, but provide something like a gas mask or clean water or something like that as people are getting out of the region. What if we build the volcano taller, like a silo? That would actually just send the dust and stuff into the atmosphere, and then that could block out the sun for a while. So that would do more damage. But interesting idea, yeah. Let's see. Badgers, we don't need no stinking badgers, okay? If you're right next to the volcano, it's easy to believe in a volcano god. I would say so, for sure. Yeah, the ash is the most lethal. Yes. So these are, yeah, the ash is bad. And then when it mixes with water, if it rains, for example, at the same time, or if it's some kind of pipes burst, or it gets into a river or something, this can turn basically into concrete. It'll just sludge everything up. So if you get a lot of ash covering a town while it's raining, this can create a really damaging kind of like a mudslide, but it becomes concrete, and you're just done. So the biggest thing, if there's a volcano, get out. That's it. And so that's why we would need some kind of infrastructure and planning and rehearsal and stuff, like volcano drills, to make sure people could just get out of the area very quickly. So that's what I would probably do as a plan. Was that what happened to Pompeii? So it appears what happened to Pompeii was likely a lot of hot, heavy gases. And when these gases, they didn't go out really into the atmosphere, these are heavy gases that ended up coming down the side of the volcano. And because they are a gas, you're not having to deal with the friction involved between two solids, you know, like a lava trying to go down the side of a mountain. Instead, it's able to just fly down the side of the mountain. That hot gas is probably what killed and cooked a lot of the people. A lot of the people that we find are in this thing called like a boxing position, different from a fencing position. And it's what happens when you get cooked. Your muscles are cooked. So the people were not, the volcanic ash that ended up covering and encasing everyone likely did not kill most people. People were probably already dead by that time, cooked by this hot blanket of just poisonous gas. We're talking like very, 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 very hot, like unimaginably hot. You breathe it in, it melted your lungs. Like we're talking like you died very quickly. You were just cooked immediately. So that's why there's a lot of people that have this kind of position, because that's what happens when you cook a person. Just the way that the muscles will shorten up, you end up doing this kind of boxing position. So that's why people were found that way. And then they were covered in ash. So, yeah. Let's see. If it is inevitable, why shouldn't we find a way to harness energy from a volcanic eruption? Because I think it depends on what type of eruption it is, and it's very difficult to predict that. So the way that we kind of can use the energy that's sort of related to a volcano is geothermal energy. So if it's an area that has a lot of volcanoes in it, it is easier to access that hot, that heat underground. And so we can actually use that to heat up water, turn it into steam, and that steam will spin the turbines that generate electricity. So places like Iceland that have a lot of volcanoes, they also use a lot of geothermal energy. So that's the way that we've been doing it, but not specifically from the eruption itself. Yeah. But that's a great question. Over time, we can bring in anteaters. Sugar, did you do this on purpose? Did you know that that's my... I hate anteaters so much. Do not get me started on how much I hate anteaters. Do not get me started, because I will just run off in this anteater hate direction, okay? We can use any other droppings, okay? But not anteaters. No. I hate anteaters. I thought all we had to do was sacrifice a virgin. Well, I guess, maybe the volcano gods are getting more picky. Maybe they went vegan. Maybe we need to sacrifice some carrots. So we might have to consider that. Yeah, so you did actually mention, Ratsa, the thermal energy thing. Let's see. So the same reason you wouldn't use a bomb to make electricity. Right. It's just very unpredictable. It's hard to harness that energy. That would be why. Yeah, harnessing lightning, too much Aitling. No, platypus, they're great. They're great. They're fabulous. They're very chubby and just, they're very cute. I like the bill. I like the thing. I like that they're venomous. Like, I like it. It's cool. But anteaters. I hate their design. Like, their shape. They just look like tubes with hair. And then these ants are so amazing, and they take these times to, like, it takes so long for them to build these amazing cities, and this anteater's like, and then, and they can't even open their jaw. Like, what an idiot. Okay? It's not that hard. Obviously. It's not their choice to not open their jaw, but, and they just look so stupid. Oh, they're just a bunch of tubes. I'm not even gonna post, I'm not even. But my students know, because they'll accidentally talk about anteaters in the class at some point, and then I just go off of these anteaters, and they have a fun time with it. No, I just hate. I don't have a history of anteaters. I don't. It's not like anteaters killed my family or something. I just hate them, and I like ants, so that's why I really like ants, and the ants work so hard. These little things are so lazy. They're dumb, and I hate them. And they're just hairy tubes. Their body is a tube, and their face is a tube, and their tail is a tube, and their feet are tubes. They don't even have, like fingers. They're just tubes. It's just a very stupid-looking animal. It's like a kid drew a picture that's, like, 5 years old, and then somehow this became real, and then also it kills ants. And it sucks. I hate them so much. I just really hate anteaters. I just hate them. I will delete any pictures you post of anteaters. No, I probably won't, because you guys will, it's too much work for me. The platypus is an abomination to Darwin. Possibly, yeah, see, spamming Discord with anteater pics. Yeah, please don't. Chubby's good. Yeah, when you see them, it's like, they're big. You want them just... But you don't want to do that to the males, because they're venomous. They got a spur, and that's cool. Spur's a cool word. Boom, spur, That's fun. We need anteater eaters. Yeah, that's me. I would eat an anteater. I would just be the one weirdo hunting anteaters. And just eating them like, oh, what, do they taste good? No, they actually taste really terrible, but I'm eating them out of spite. My diet is 100% anteater, and I only wear stuff made out of anteater. This is an anteater wig, just to kill them all. I really, really hate them. They're so stupid, and these ants are so cool. They make such a cool house. The houses are the ones that are, like, really, really tall. It's like the termite houses. They're really just intricate, and then this jerk shows up and just, like, Just tears it all down. It's like Godzilla, but way less awesome. Ugh, they're tubes. Have you seen them? They're tubes. Like, it's, if you put more hair on the head, you wouldn't even know which way the anteater's facing. They're stupid looking. Giant exploding mountains, yes. Thank you. Next question. I think it's the last question. Yeah. How are neighborhood or city boundaries made? How can they cause problems? I've never understood the reasoning behind businesses closing earlier due to the virus, as if the virus is more active during night hours. I'm not sure. Again, Catholic traditionalist, we're having a class about geography, but, you know, I'm a teacher that answers every question my students present, so okay. No, the virus is not more active at night. It's because people go out and get together at night with things like nightclubs and bars where they get very close together. We're reducing the amount of time people can spend together, because if people are not voluntarily distancing, we are forcing them to distance this way. That's all. Yeah. Neighborhood and city boundaries can simply cut off animal habitats. So we're not talking about how they necessarily interact with the environment or any problems they can cause with the environment. We're just talking about neighborhood boundaries or city boundaries. How are these made? What are some ways that these are made? So we want to answer the first question first. And then we can talk about how that causes problems. Yeah, got step one, step two. See? Because if you gave that as an answer, like if this was presented on my homework and you gave that as an answer, I could only give you half of the points because you only answered one of the questions. Okay, demographics, segregation, yes, jeez. Let me tell you, urban planning, that is a history of racism. That's awful. Okay, boundaries create division among society. Why? What's a positive reason to create this boundary? Similar people clumping together, okay? Similar in which way? Some boundaries go back to what the people have agreed, and then they get incorporated as the city's expanded, right? So we can just make an agreement between our previous neighbors, that's true. What are some natural boundaries that we can only expand the city or we can only expand the neighborhood to this point because something natural, like a volcano, for example, or a mountain range? What are some other ideas for a natural boundary? I've been to the original ghetto in Venice. Cool. If we pack all the rich people in a small area, then we don't have to interact with them. Really, Ratsa, how many rich people do you interact with on a daily basis that it became such a problem that we have to pack them all together? You're just like overrun with rich people where you live. You just like go to the store. Oh man, Mark Zuckerberg took my parking spot, right? Canyons, yes. Forests, rivers, other bodies of waters, mountains, walling from boulders. I like that. There was an underwater forest that was made through a natural dam. The river was there, and these landslides just said, "Damn it," and then it got dammed. Gerrymandering, that's true. Those are voting boundaries, though. Narrow streets after population growth that can jam traffic. Yes, I think that is definitely a problem. We're looking for natural boundaries. So how can they cause problems? How can they cause problems? Why do we even have city boundaries? Lee is smart and can counter argument, not used for smart people. I'm sorry. I mean, we have, some ideas. Yeah, we can put the rich in a spot, but they won't stay there. I just heard that there's some people that are going up to like they're taking the SpaceX to the ISS. It's like 3 super rich people, We can't put them in a spot. They'll figure something out. Rich people walk among us. That's true. That's true, Chris. That's true. But I'm just imagining that Rats is just having this problem where his city is lousy with rich people. That's what I'm thinking. Shorelines, yes, that's another one. So how are these going to be? Why do we make these neighborhood boundaries? Why do we make city boundaries? What's the purpose of that? What are some practical purposes of that? Let's not think about anything with like prejudice, racism, something like that. What's a practical reason to have a city boundary? So we do have the friction, yep, between the demographic groups. Okay, taxes. That's true. And then, of course, why do we have taxes? Just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Administration, absolutely. Sitting in the street, asking if you have any spare millions, right? To define jurisdiction of the city government, okay. Keep the area for farming, that's true. Tax, again. So why do we have taxes? Hopefully you guys all know the answer to that. I'm hoping. But just in case, I do want to ask that. My neighbor is the richest person in my town. He owned the company I worked for before he sold it off for $6 million. Do you just hate your neighbor, boss? Is that why? Management of resources. Our taxes pay for affordable and universal health care. So that's one thing. Jurisdictions like Las Vegas isn't Las Vegas. Okay. Keep the undesirables out. So we do want to make sure that we're talking about practical reasons, not really those reasons of prejudice do exist, absolutely, and that's one of those processes. Even has a name. It's called redlining. So those do definitely factor into it. We're just trying to think just like a benign sort of practical kind of reason. Taxes cover services. Taxes are to please the devil and make Jesus cry. I don't know. I feel like Jesus would be okay with taxes if his idea was like feeding the 5,000 because they were hungry. It's like, well, we can't multiply, so we'll just we'll do that. Okay. These are all these reasons that the city is made, right? So we want to be able to manage the stuff in the city with the money from the people that are in the city. So this way, the people in this group, it's just easier to manage them as a smaller group. So how can this cause problems? Having this city boundary. City walls against the barbarians, yeah, that's true. That was a practical reason. So why is this a problem? Let's just think about just the tax situation. That's sort of very practical, straightforward reason, not like income inequality stuff with keeping certain groups of people outside of a city. Not like that. That's fine. You guys can go off on tangents. I just won't read them if you guys are referring to each other, like you and Chris are talking to each other. That's fine. You guys are totally welcome to do that. But since you're talking to each other, I won't read them out loud. That's all. Overpopulation. Okay, overpopulation can definitely happen, and then we need to expand the boundary. But how do we do that if we're next to a place that we cannot expand into, such as the ocean, right, or some other city? Certain areas cost different amounts to keep them of money to keep running. That's true. Mm-hmm. Corruption, absolutely. Firefighters refusing to go outside the boundary. Yes, absolutely. So these boundaries in our minds can set up a stopping point between the people that we care about, our people, and those people. So that can prevent us from that. The ocean. Yeah, it is the ocean. Somewhere the Dutch are laughing at you. Those Dutch and their polders. Yes, exactly. I guess, yeah, some people are not afraid of the ocean. Those people are the Dutch. So these are all reasons that can cause problems with each other. What about some problems with the environment? How could our city boundaries cause a problem with the environment? Not city activity. Not that we have a bunch of factories and we're causing pollution. Not like that. Just the boundary. Just setting a boundary. If the city grows beyond the capacity, the sewer systems, and the food supplies, it'll choke, okay? Or what? Is my question does it not make sense? I can type it. Maybe that'll be easier. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups. Is this where I say the boundary intrudes on animal habitats? Yeah, the boundaries can intrude on animal habitats for sure. And of course, in places with very large predators, that becomes a problem, right? Waste runoff, right? If we're right on the border of something and we have normal amounts of waste, that's where is that going to go? Where do we put our landfills? You know, we don't want them. We have this saying called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So that's a saying in urban planning. NIMBY stuff will be things like factories, anything loud, and anything really stinky. So these landfills, nobody wants them nearby. So we push them to the boundary, and that boundary, if it's right up against something natural, it's going to pollute it, unfortunately. Tribal people being encroached upon, absolutely. Absolutely. We might say, well, you know, we need more land. We're using it better than those people are using it. We're just going to take some of that. So these are all fantastic. I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised that you guys really got into this. So cool. I think we can do another live stream after this. So let me just set it up and then we'll do that. Let's give me until the half hour. How about that? Because I think I am going to take off this wig. I got to redo my hair and get some more coffee or get some more tea. So how about, yeah, we'll come back in about 20 minutes, take your break. So I'm sure you guys need a break too. And then we'll talk about whatever the next one was. What is the next one? In our next adventure, we're going to talk about what? What is it? Let me just check. Just if you don't want, if you're not interested in it, or if you're like, oh, that is an interesting topic, you know, just load faster. Oh my golly goodness. We are your smartest class. You guys are. You guys are really good. But honestly, I got a lot of really smart students. I'm very impressed by them. Ooh, we're talking about the solar system. Okay, hope you guys like the solar system. Maybe I should wear blue hair. That's what we'll do, okay? So, yeah, let's do that, and then we'll come back in about 20 minutes. If I can start earlier, we will start up the video earlier, but we're going to start the class on the half hour, so we'll do that. Alrighty, see you in a bit.